right, let's just get right into the first Hawk Talk. We have a graduate student, Scott Fiorini. He is in the Physician Assistant Program, and his talk is called Listening to Your Patient, the Invaluable History and Physical Exam. It's my pleasure to introduce Scott.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. By a show of hands, how many people in this room have been sick with the common cold before? Congratulations, you guys have all been diagnosed as human beings. As it comes to no surprise, humans get sick. And when we get sick, we go to our healthcare providers to get better. Since starting PA school, my friends and family always ask me, Scott, what's the hardest diagnosis to treat? That is, what's the biggest and baddest disease out there? Now, as much as I would love to enlighten my family and stump my friends with words they can't pronounce, the answer's simple, guys. We can't treat what we don't know. Now, by another show of hands, how many people in this room either have or know of someone who is misdiagnosed? This is a zebra. Yes, it's supposed to be there. A zebra to many means an animal you frantically love to draw as a child, or even a reason to visit the local zoo. But I'm going to give you guys a little insight to medicine. A zebra is a term that we refer to as a rare disease. It comes from the saying, when you hear hoofs, think horses, not zebras. However, diseases do not read the textbook, and sometimes zebras present as a common cold. The first step in medicine is to come up with a diagnosis. A lot easier said than done. It would also turn out that sometimes that could be the hardest step. We can't treat normal blood work. We can't fix a bone that's not broken. But most importantly, we can't answer what's not asked. Following is a true story of two patients. Here are Mike and Sarah. Mike and Sarah are both sick with the same symptoms. They both miss work, and both of their bosses are frustrated. They're accountants. It's the height of tax season. So they decide to go be seen by their healthcare provider, and they are later that day. Sarah is seen first. Sarah's not feeling well. She has a runny nose and a fever. But Sarah denies all their symptoms. Sarah's agitated. She wants to get out of there. Sarah knows the more questions that Dr. M asks her, the more answers, and the longer it'll take. Sarah just wants her bed. After that conversation, Dr. M says, Sarah, I believe it's a 24-hour bug, and she sends her home with a good old prescription of bed rest. Later that day, Mike is seen. Same runny nose and fever. However, Mike tells Dr. M a crucial factor. Mike and his sister were babysitting their nephew with the flu. Aha. Dr. M asked a couple more questions and come up with a diagnosis of the flu. Dr. M sends Mike home with anti-flu medicine. 3 days go by. Sarah, sick, fever, aches, chills. Sarah has the flu. Sarah's forced to miss a week of work while her brother, Mike, return in a couple of days. So let's recap here. We have brother and sister, same symptoms, same exposure, same healthcare provider. So you should think that they had the same diagnosis, but they didn't. Here's why. A recent study published by a healthcare provider found that misdiagnosis, it's really a domino effect. And often it starts with that unspecific symptom. You guys know, like, when you go on to WebMD and you search headache and you find out that you have terminal brain cancer and you only have 2 minutes to live, that type. A lot of times patients don't know the correct things to say or not. In Sarah's case, she didn't realize that babysitting her nephew would end up with her having the flu. She didn't think that that day at her sister's house could have been the cause. In medicine, we ask questions. And every answer you give us is followed up by more questions. And sure, when you're not feeling sick, it's okay. But it's a lot harder when you're not feeling well. And because of that, patients get irritable. And we only do this so we could assure the proper diagnosis and safe treatment. But guys, when that third domino falls, that's how we can miss the flu. That's where the error lies in diagnosing. $3.3 trillion. Now, as much as I would love to say that's what my bank account looks like, I promise you that's more what my student debt is looking like, as every student here could say. That's the amount of money we spent on healthcare alone last year. What did we spend it on? Imaging, blood work, genetic testing, and of course, insurance to cover it all. So with this amount of money, you would think we have a tight grip on healthcare, right? 12.1 million. That's the amount of people that were misdiagnosed last year. That's roughly 1 in every 25 patients. That's roughly 1 person a day misdiagnosed. Was it you? So I thought to myself, what's the problem? The spendings, innovation, and medicine have never been so fruitful. Yet we're missing something. Income's a definition of communication. It is the exchanging of information. Now, in order to exchange information, you need at least 2 people, like Dr. M and Mike. The difference between Sarah and Mike was Mike happened to be a better communicator. They had the same symptoms, but it was Mike's little detail about having the flu that allowed Dr. M to recognize an early, nonspecific symptom. The following is a true case I was in, and what makes this case so invaluable for you all to hear is because this one person nearly resulted in the death of 50. Here's Brandon, your average guy, 55 years old, wife, kids, married, home. Brandon's your regular guy. However, when I met Brandon, he just got out of jail a month prior. Brandon's a diabetic. He admitted to eating all the foods he shouldn't. But that wasn't Brandon's biggest problem. His biggest problem was he hasn't taken his diabetic medicine in over 2 months. And when he came to the hospital, he was sick. He was so sick that the sugar in his blood was 900. Now, to give you guys an understanding, you want it to be from 60 to 100. It was 9 times the normal limit. Deadly. So when he was seen, the medical team lowered his sugar. And from a medical standpoint, it was a success. But here's where the story changes. In comes Scott Fiorini, the eager, wide-eyed PA student conducting his history on Brandon. And when I was talking to Brandon, I noticed he couldn't answer me without coughing. So I said, okay, let's think this out. We have a diabetic, but he's coughing. But wait a second, guys, wait a second. Diabetes does not equal cough. So I said to myself, okay, let's step back and let me conduct a good history and physical exam. And I thought back to the teaching that I've had at the physician assistant program by my amazing professors, and you could almost say I pictured their heads in my mind. And I stepped back and I conducted a good old history. First, we asked of onset and location. Brandon told me that the cough started in jail. Where was the cough? Is it just a phlegm in the back of the throat, in the whole chest? I feel in the whole chest. How long have you had the cough for? I've had the cough for just about 7 months. That's a long time. Describe the cough to me. Well, you know, I'm coughing up phlegm, a little bit green. Sometimes it's a little red. Brandon was coughing up blood. Does anything make the cough better or worse? Well, I've tried Robitussin, but no change. How often during the day are you coughing? The whole day. I wake up and I go to sleep with the cough. Brandon, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say the cough is? The cough is about a 10. So I said, Brandon, have you been tested for tuberculosis? Oh yeah, that's what they said I had. They said I had tuberculosis. I said, there's no way. You don't get diagnosed with tuberculosis and walk out of a jail cell, right? Well, he told me the name of the medicine and the length of you're supposed to take the medication. So I said, okay, hold on a second. I'm running out of here to grab a mask. I will be right back. It would turn out later, Brandon was tested and did test positive for tuberculosis. Now, tuberculosis is one of those diseases in medicine that you don't have to touch it to get it. All you have to do is breathe in the same air as the person that had it. Brandon had been in the ER for 8 hours at that point, exposing family, friends, healthcare providers, and patients that were sick. So where is miscommunication lost? The answer, it's on both sides. When we spoke to Brandon later, he mentioned that for the past couple nights, he's been having night sweats. To which we said, well, why didn't you tell us you had night sweats? I mean, it would seem obvious to most that that's a problem, but not to Brandon. He said his wife always blasts the heat, and he always sleeps with a blanket. He thought the combination was normal. On the healthcare provider side, when we see 900, that's a problem. And when we form that initial diagnosis, on the slide I mentioned back with the domino effect, that hypothetical diagnosis was get that sugar down, and we did. But you see how that little miscommunication of the cough is what let tuberculosis go completely under the radar. So although this might have seemed like it was just a case about Brandon and tuberculosis, it was not. This was a case about miscommunication. So although that cough you feel usually goes away, and although those aches usually get better with ibuprofen, and although that headache always comes during the springtime when the pollen falls, let Brandon's story remind you of a factor to communicate with us on all levels. When you're sick, give us a look into your life for those couple of weeks. If something doesn't feel right, bring it up. If something doesn't look right, show us. And if you don't know, ask. Lastly, I leave you guys with a quote by J.A. Jonas. Unless we learn to know ourselves, we run the dangers of destroying ourselves. Thank you guys, and have a great afternoon.